Okay. Would someone want to volunteer to read this question, by the way, from the audience?
Sure. So a retail organization is deploying a new application that will read and write data to a database. The company wants to deploy the application in 3 different AWS regions in an active configuration. The databases need to replicate to keep information in sync. Which solution best meets these requirements? So we have 4 options, and ideally we need to choose one.
Yeah. And in case you are expected to choose 2 or more, so it is like clearly mentioned that you need to choose 2 or 3 options. Okay.
So there'll be different type of questions, like you'll also have a true false, but again questions will not be straightforward. Like in this case they could clearly have asked how you can deploy an application with 3 different AWS regions and active configuration. So instead of that, they'll create some kind of a use case around it, like you're an architect of this company and this company is doing a retail business and they are the new in AWS or something like that. Try to create a use case or a story around the question. So it is important to understand the gist of the question, like what exactly they're trying to ask, rather than getting more into the details of the company or the role that they're describing.
Yeah. So if we try to understand this question in bit detail, so it is asking for active configuration, which is giving us an hint that okay, it is a multi-region kind of setup, because when we talk about active configuration, we are talking about a DR setup. So it is, and DR can be implemented in the multi-region. But when we are talking about high availability, so that is something which is in the same region across multiple availability zones. So here we are talking about some services which can be multi-region services, okay? And now they are asking the database need to replicate to keep information in sync. So your database, whatever database you are using, that should be able to replicate in real time across the region. So I think these are the key things here which we need to keep in mind while choosing any options here. So first option is Amazon Athena with S3 cross region replication. Any thoughts on this option? Can it be a possible answer, or it cannot be a possible answer, or may not be?
It may not be Deepali, because there might be a delay between Amazon Athena to sync to an S3, and then it will be synced back to the another region. Because they're asking for an active.
Mhm.
There might be a delay between syncing data between different regions, and in between we are introducing S3 as well. So I believe its first one is not possible.
Okay, good thought process, Dhanush. But a key thing which you are missing here is that Athena is not a database. Here we are looking for some database. But if we talk about Athena, it is not a database. It is a simple querying service, which you can put means with which you can query your S3 data. Okay. So definitely we can simply rule out this option for that reason. Now let's look at the second option, AWS database migration service with change data capture. So again, the reason is same. This is the migration service, not the database service. So we can rule out this option as well. Happy to hear any different views. Okay, let's move on to the next option. Now it says Amazon DynamoDB with global table. So yes, DynamoDB is a database and global table. So global table is a concept in DynamoDB. So if you're creating your DynamoDB table as a global table, then yes, you can communicate with other regions as well. So this can be a possible option, but let's check what is the other option. What are the other options available? So now they are talking about Aurora global databases as well. Any, because yeah, these two sounds to be maybe these can be, one of these can be the right option, but which one is that? Any thoughts?
Both will be applicable because the question itself is a best mix, right? With more than one right answer. We'll go for C.
I'm sorry. Would you like to repeat? I
I'll
didn't.
go for both C and D, Deepak.
No, we just need to choose one because they have not written it explicitly that we need to choose two options.
I'm just guessing the option 3 will be best suited because of the global tables, and it's just a guess.
Okay. Okay, so the right answer here is C only. And the reason is because here the key term here is that they want to keep information in sync. So as Dhanush, you mentioned in the beginning that we cannot really expect any delays. So when you are using the global databases, then when you are replicating across the region, there is a delay when it is syncing up. But when you are when you are using DynamoDB global tables, so it is getting synced behind the scene. You don't really need to do any additional configuration for this. So uh, it is always getting synced in the real time. So that's how DynamoDB is a better choice here rather than Aurora global databases. Okay. So yeah, correct answer is C. Now let's look at the next question. Who wants to read this one? I want someone else apart from Dhanush, Rohit, and Hari. I need some fourth volunteer this time. Come on, guys, you just need to read the question. You are not supposed to tell the answer and justifications. That we will brainstorm. Okay. Krishna, would you like to read this out for us?
Yeah, sure, Deepali.
Okay, thank you.
So you are building an application that will collect information about user behavior. The application will rapidly ingest large amounts of dynamic data and requires very low latency. The database must be scalable without incurring downtime. Which database would you recommend for this scenario?
Okay, and options we have RDS, DynamoDB, Redshift, and we have two instances of RDS, MySQL and Microsoft SQL Server.
Okay.
It would be.
RDS, maybe I would suggest DynamoDB.
Yeah, I'm not sure about
Maybe NoSQL database. This one
Mhm.
maybe quite faster than the other options, RDS with MySQL or RDS with Microsoft SQL.
Mhm.
But I'm doubtful about Redshift.
the thing which I feel is right. They say it's a dynamic data. Basically, the data is not structured. So if it's
Correct.
not structured, we cannot go for an RDBMS based databases. We might be go for the non-SQL, non-SQL based databases for performance. In this case, DynamoDB is a non-SQL, and Redshift. I'm not sure about that. So I'm not able to take a choice between DynamoDB and this.
Yeah, so absolutely correct approach, Dhanush. So again, yes, as you said, here we are talking about the dynamic data, then we cannot restrict into a schema structure. So we need to choose a NoSQL one. Redshift here is a database service, data warehouse service in AWS. So here we are trying to ingest the incoming real-time data. Uh, so we are not bounding into any like schema structure, and we are dealing with the small set of data. We really don't need to get into the analytics and warehousing things, so Redshift is not a good option here. And it also talking about that it must be scalable without incurring downtime. So as we understand, DynamoDB is a fully managed service, and whenever we talk about fully managed means we don't need to worry about scaling and high availability of this. So that's how we can choose DynamoDB confidently here. Any different thoughts or any other thing if is coming into the mind and that needs some discussion? Okay, then we are good to move on. Who wants to read the next one? Come on, guys. Otherwise, I will randomly pick some name. Sakshi, would you like to read this one, please? Sakshi, are you there? Okay. Then Rinesh. People are not willing to speak. Strange.
Madam,
Okay.
may I try?
Yes, please.
A training provider hosts a website using Amazon API gateway on the front end. Recently, there has been heavy traffic on the website, and the company wants to control access by allowing authenticated traffic from paying students only. How should the company limit access to authenticate users only? Choose only two options. Option A, allow users that are authenticated through Amazon Cognito. B, deploy AWS KMS to identify users. C, allow X.509 certificates to authenticate traffic. D, limit traffic through API gateway. And option E, assign permissions in AWS IAM to allow users.
Okay. And we need to choose two options. Any thoughts, guys?
I'll go for option
B and E.
But you said B and E.
not B. D. Limit
D
traffic.
and E. Okay. API gateway and IAM. Okay.
I would also pick option D and E.
Okay. Now
Madam,
let's
what is
For EA also, it's
X.509
a possible
certificate?
answer.
So
um
yeah, basically they already hosted the entire API has been protected using an API gateway. So
mhm.
using relevant technology in API gateway, adding an role-based or an attribute-based control on API gateway makes it easier to achieve. Basically, we need to understand who are the paid user. For that, we can use an IAM permissions, user permissions, and restrict using an API gateway. So D and E make sense to me.
Okay. Yes, someone was also adding to something.
Yeah, A is also a possible answer. Authentication and
Okay.
A
Why
and
A?
D.
Would you like to explain?
No,
Means when we use Cognito, what it does? Any thoughts around this?
I thought it's front end,
Mm-hmm.
and when they do the authentication with, and it has to be combined with IAM.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I just there's a possibility. I'm like bit confused about A, B, and B.
Hmm. Okay.
I just ruled out B and C, not other like that. Another three can be either or not. Two of them.
Yeah, I think for E, there is no debate. E is definitely should be the right answer because whenever we talk about security
Yes.
or these things, so IAM is definitely a foundational service. So no second thought about option E. But yes, now we need to look for other possible option in this list. Okay, so Rajat, would you like to add more context to this?
So if you remember, like when I was showing API gateway, I talked like how you can control traffic and how you can add authentication. So Amazon API provides an integration with the AWS Cognito service for the authentication for your API. So role-based access, I told you like if you want to access only admins can create a record, but all others can read a record. So AWS Cognito is a service that you can use for authentication. And the things that we're talking about limit traffic. So limit traffic says like only 100 calls per minute or 100 calls per second should be allowed on the API gateway, but it does not talk about the authentication. The limit can only talk about the number of request API gateway should process. But here the question is saying like how we can authenticate, allow the authentication only. So
Yeah,
then I
and
think
when
and
we are using API gateway and we are limiting traffic, then it is not the best use of this service, because API gateways again, like fully managed service from AWS. So you can use API gateway to handle as much as traffic you're getting on your application. So it is something not to limit traffic. But
but
yes,
still, Dipali, sometimes it's valid to limit traffic for the resources based on the use cases. So that is why those provide the feature. So you can define the upper limit
mhm.
sometimes that you want.
Yeah, means there are scenarios when
The
you need
rate
to define
limiting.
that.
Yeah, we are not
Yes,
rate
yes.
limiting it, so I don't see
Hmm,
any rate limiting here with
hmm.
authentication.
Yeah, but since this is more focused on authenticating that incoming traffic, so Cognito and IAM, these are the two services through which we can handle authentication.
So
So,
also to add, like there is no right or wrong on answer. So this is a grade-based answer. If you have given answer like A and D, you will still get marks. So it's not like if you have given answer like exact, you will not get marks. It is a weighted based exam. It's not like yes for only one answer. If you select other options, then also you'll get some answer like 50% or 25% marks you will get on that topic if you select other option.
yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Any new volunteer this time?
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
go for it.
yeah, Ananta here. So let me read out. So an application you are designing receives and process files. The files are typically around 4 GB in size, and the application extracts metadata from the files, which typically takes a few seconds for such a for each file. The pattern of update is highly dynamic with the times of little activity and then multiple uploads within a short period of time. So, what architecture will address this workload the most cost efficiently?
Okay.
So, want me to read the option?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Please read and share your views. That do you think means for this scenario?
okay, so user consists data stream to store the file and use Lambda for processing. And the second option is like store the file in an EBS volume, which can then be accessed by another EC2 instance for processing. And then the third option is like place the files in an SQS queue and use fleet of EC2 instance to extract the metadata. And option D is upload files into S3 bucket and use the Amazon S3 event notification to invoke Lambda function to extract the metadata. Uh, I believe like it's a fourth option is the best option to retrieve the extracted metadata or whatever the session we gone through.
Okay. Any other thoughts from anyone?
So my thought is also option D, because Kinesis or SQS and all, um, I don't know about the limit, but
Mhm,
uploading for 4 GB and very short duration.
mhm.
So I trust in S3 to Kinesis or SQS.
Okay. So let's read options one more time and understand why it means. I know the right answer is fourth only. I 100% agree with you guys, but let's understand why other three options are ruling out here. So in first option, it is talking about Kinesis data stream to store files. So Kinesis, when we use Kinesis, so Kinesis is a service where you deal with the streaming data. So here there is no need of streaming. Here we are just getting some files which are 4 GB in size. So we will look for the cost effective option, because here they are talking about which workload is most cost efficiently. So option A will do the job, but it is not an efficient solution given the scenario. So that on that basis we can rule out the Kinesis one. And second option is talking about store the file in EBS volume. And where do we get EBS volume? Let's say on EC2 instances. So whenever like if we are storing files on EC2 instance, it will be stored in the EBS volume. So any thoughts like why this cannot be a right option? We can definitely store files on EC2, right?
But that is the application specific data stored in EBS. So when we like, and it's costly too. When we store these kind of data, it will completely uh, consume the application memory. Right?
Mhm. Yeah, so means definitely like you can store your data, means application data as well as your data files on EC2 machine. But yes, a key thing here is the cost. EBS is always the costly storage service rather than S3. S3 is the most cost effective storage service. So, in your use cases, you should definitely look for opportunities that you are storing your data for longer time in S3, and maybe the duration when you need to process that data or make some changes into that data, that time you are bringing that file onto the EC2 or maybe in Lambda, altering that and saving it back to the X3. So
So
you should,
another major factor is like they're not asking to process the file. So even if you have to process the file, then EBS would be a good option so that you can process quickly. But here it is talking about the metadata only, extracting the metadata of the file, not the actual contents of the file.
yeah, and which can be very well achieved from S3. So that's how we can rule out this EBS volume thing here because it is again a costly affair. Next option is talking about SQS queues. So it is not a storage service at all. So you can simply rule that out. It is a simple queuing service where you can like queue up your events and can process them in sequence like that.
So SQS is something like a JMS message queue that you have typically in Java. You can post a message, but not the huge objects like 4 GB in size on SQS.
Okay, so the fourth option is saying that upload files into the S3 bucket and then use event notification. What is that event notification? The moment file is saved onto the S3 bucket, it will trigger a notification, and that trigger will actually invoke the Lambda. So Lambda function will be executed and it will bring the metadata for you. So that's how fourth is the better design here. Okay, let's move on. Who wants to read this one? Questions seem to be small, but yes, options are lengthy here.
Any
No volunteer?
volunteer for the reading?
Sudhakar? Okay. No one wants to read. That's very strange. Hari Krishna, maybe you can read this one for us.
Yes. A solution architect is designing a new workload where an AWS Lambda function will access an Amazon DynamoDB table. What is the most secure means of granting the Lambda function access to the DynamoDB table? So the options are option A, create a DynamoDB username and password and give them to the developer to use in the Lambda function. Option B, create an identity and access management role with the necessary permission to access the DynamoDB table and assign the role to the Lambda function. Option C, create an identity and access management role allowing access for AWS Lambda and assigning the role to the DynamoDB table. Option D, create an identity access management user and create access and secret key for the user. Give the user the necessary permission to access the DynamoDB table. Have the developer use this key. Oh, sorry. One second.
No problem. But just a hint, and this is something which we have seen in action in our previous session, where Rajat was demonstrating the interaction between Lambda and DynamoDB tables and API.
Okay, option B looks more relevant.
Option
B, yeah.
B, you
B.
said, right?
No,
Okay.
option D for Delhi.
D.
Okay, I was
Okay.
suggesting B.
Okay, so let's read these out one more time. So it B is talking about IAM role with necessary permissions, and D is talking about IAM user and create access key and secret key for that user and give the permission to DynamoDB table.
So in the
Okay.
question, it says, what is the most secure means?
Hmm.
The reason I chose D is that there is an additional step in D where we are also giving user the secret key to access the machine. That is why I chose
And
D.
you are giving these access key and secret key to which user? Let's say you have a user ABC, and what this user is doing, you have assigned access key and secret key to this ABC user, and then what this ABC user is trying to access in turn.
They will access the Amazon DynamoDB table.
Okay, and then how about Lambda? Because we need to give access to our Lambda function so it can access DynamoDB table.
Okay.
Right?
I'm not really sure on that.
Okay, so like whenever we need to deal with such scenarios where one service need to access another service, so you just need to remember this thing that IAM role is the only way through which you can make that happen. So look for the options where it is talking about the role. But if I read this question here, I can see in two options it is talking about IAM role. So let's read these two options carefully and choose the correct one. So in first option, it is saying create IAM role with necessary permissions to access DynamoDB table and assign role to Lambda. While in another one, it is saying create role, allow access from Lambda and assign the role to DynamoDB table. So now you need to think hard. So if you have done hands-on, so means it, so then there will be no confusion for you. So you will be clear that exactly where we can assign role. But if you have not done hands-on, then you will just keep on thinking and remain confused that exactly where we can assign role. So there is no way to assign roles to DynamoDB. You can assign roles to Lambda or EC2, those instances. So that's how B will be the right option here. Okay. Rajat, do you want to add anything here?
No, looks good. You explained
All
everything.
right, let's move on then. Any volunteer for this one?
Yeah, I can do.
Please go ahead.
An architect is designing a serverless application that will accept images uploaded by user from around the world. The application will make API calls to backend services to save the state data of the user to a database. Which combination of services would provide a solution that is cost effective while delivering the least latency? A would be Amazon S3, API Gateway, AWS Lambda, Amazon Azure. API Gateway, Amazon S3, AWS Lambda, DynamoDB. C, Amazon CloudFront, API Gateway, Amazon S3, AWS Lambda, DynamoDB. D would be Amazon CloudFront, API Gateway, Amazon S3, AWS Lambda, Amazon RDS.
I think it is the easy one. Any thoughts, guys? So here, let's try to understand the key terms in this question. First of all, it is a serverless application. and then it is getting data, images from all over the world, and then it need to store the session state data for different user who are saving those images. So you need to capture the session details. And another thing, it is looking for a cost effective and least latency solution. Yes, please. Someone was saying something.
A or B.
Sorry, which one? A, you said.
A or B.
A or B.
I'm not.
Okay.
So the cost effective wise, I'm not sure it's
Okay.
RDS or DynamoDB.
Mhm. So
But that
in
is
A or B, the
yes,
only difference I think is in the RDS or DynamoDB. But now, since
yes,
it is talking about serverless, so RDS is not a serverless service, while DynamoDB is a serverless service. Now, can anyone help me recall? Because I think I covered this when we were discussing about RDS. In RDS, how many different database engine were supported? Anyone recall that? RDS is a relational database service
I think
where we.
4 or 5 MySQL,
Mhm.
Oracle,
Okay.
I think
PostgreSQL.
It was
uh,
6.
Yeah.
6, I think.
Yeah, six is the number. But now let's quickly revisit what those six options are. So you said Oracle, MySQL. What else?
Postgres,
Postgres.
PostgreSQL. Yeah.
Yeah. Then MariaDB. Another one is SQL Server. So all these are like server based databases. Means when we use RDS, what it does behind the scene, that it procure EC2 machine, and we define the size, that okay, we need these kind of machine, T2 micro, T2 large, whatever. So we define the size, and it make that database available on that EC2 instance for us. We also discussed another database here, which was Amazon Aurora. So Amazon Aurora is a AWS proprietary database, and that is now available as a serverless offering as well. So RDS, we cannot say that it is not a serverless service at all. There is just one flavor, Aurora, which has both the capabilities that you can procure Amazon server based database. Also, you can have serverless database. But here we are talking about serverless applications, and DynamoDB is an option available here. So it will be a better choice rather than this one. Okay. So all these services are looking good, but here it is lacking some service, which is CloudFront, because we need to deal with the least latency. So CloudFront is a service, like it is a CDN service, cloud distribution network you create. So since this application is dealing with the images, so what CloudFront help you to do, that it will cache the images, and whenever anyone is trying to access that application, it will make those images available from the cache itself rather than downloading it from the source. So in order to get that latency, we should be using CloudFront on such applications. So here in these two options, if we quickly scan the services, so yes, definitely we need CloudFront, but here also we have option RDS or DynamoDB. So DynamoDB option, including with CloudFront, will be the right choice here, because it is all serverless and it is letting us deal with the latency as well. So C should be the right choice. Okay, any different thoughts or any point which need more discussion? Okay, let's move on then. Okay, sorry, we are done with the questions.
Yeah, so these are just few sample questions that we picked up from a few of the old exams. So there are lots of questions available on the other free websites, and there are paid exams as well available. And there's one more option, like when you register on your AWS account, you can also register for a sample test. So when you think like